Hi, and welcome to English Language Paper 1, question number 3 revision. The learning objective today will be to focus on a model example of answers for question 3 and to really understand the mark scheme as well. Now, question 3 is all about structure, and I'd like to bring to your attention an example of structure, which is that structure is the way in which a text has been organized. So think of the building blocks or a brick, for example, and how lots of bricks are used to create a wall, and so on with punctuation marks. That structure used to create a sentence. That sentence in turn creates a paragraph, and the length of that sentence again in turn creates an essay or a text. So you need to know the building blocks and structure. The question we're going to tackle today is, how has the writer structured the text to interest the reader? You could write about 1. What the writer focuses our attention on at the beginning, 2. How and why this focus changes as the extract develops, and 3. Any other structural features that interest you. These bullet points are very handy, and remember that these bullet points stay the same. So if it's an 8-mark question, you're really going to be spending a minimum of 8 minutes to a maximum of 10 on this question. Use the bullet points as your starting phrases. Turn the bullet point tasks into starting sentences and write the rest of your paragraphs around them. And that way you make sure that you're answering the question rather than waffling on. Okay, so let's look closely at the mark scheme. Shows detailed and perceptive understanding of structural features, and I'm going to go through with you quite a few different structural techniques today. Analyzes the effects of the writer's choice of structural features, so you need to explain the writer's message behind using those techniques. Why did the writer choose to use a third-person narrative? Why did the writer choose to use a long paragraph at the beginning but a very short, sharp sentence in the middle of the passage? Selects a judicious range of examples, so you need to use quotes from across the text, short and relevant. Makes sophisticated, accurate use of subject terminology, so you need to know what you mean by narrative, narrator. You need to know what a complex sentence is, what a compound sentence is. You need to know the difference between a semicolon and a colon, all of your punctuation marks. Okay. So structure is quite important for question number 4 as well, and that's why I'd like to spend a bit more time explaining to you what structural techniques are. So here are a few questions that you should think about as well. Over here. Structure means shifting between different times and places. So if you notice there's a sudden change of time, so if it's talking about the evening when earlier in the text it was talking about the morning, that is a structural device that you will need to comment on and explain why the writer chose to talk about the change of time. If there's a sudden or gradual introduction of a new character, a different focal point, you need to mention why you think the writer chose to introduce a character out in a particular paragraph rather than the beginning and the middle or the end. Developing and reiterating. So if the writer is repeating something, that normally suggests that it's quite important, or it also suggests that there could be a motif there. And positioning of key sentences and their impact on the whole text. I've also mentioned to my students about cyclical structure. So that's when a text starts off talking about, for example, in the early morning, someone was running away, whatever. And then at the end of this passage, there's something that links back to that early first paragraph where it says in the early morning again. So a cyclical structure is simply when the beginning is linked back to at the end. The ending reminds you of the beginning, very, very much so, through a repeated image or a reference to a semantic field that you've noticed mentioned earlier on in the first line or indeed the first paragraph.